Hello and welcome to Esther's Gardening Adventures. I'm Esther and today I'm back in the community garden, so I'm going to give you an update on how my community garden is doing. This is a rental plot that I rent annually from the county, and I've slowly been building it out, and so I'm going to give you an update on that. And then also I'm going to do a check-in about my winter sown seedlings. We had 2 days with temperatures in the mid 80s, and I came out to my community garden today and my, what is it called? My Chinese mustard has bolted. Let me pull up the tool here. Our Chinese mustard has gone to seed. Yep. Now this is to be expected when you have temperatures in the mid 80s. And you know, this is a new garden bed. I'm learning the dynamics of it to some extent. And I'm about to water everybody, but the kales and everything seem to be doing okay. It's just the Chinese mustard that was not copacetic with that. So when something bolts, that means it's gone to seed. That means that it's no longer trying to produce more leaves or more of the kind of things you want to harvest from it. I haven't tasted Chinese mustard, but I suspect since mustard is already sort of hot and bitter, that it probably gets super bitter when it bolts. But I might try it. We'll see. Okay, let me get some watering done. I don't have my setup yet done for pumping water from the nearby creek. So this is what I do. I haul in gallons of water. Sometimes I'll do it in bigger containers, but in this case I brought in about 8. And then when I empty them out, I just dump them into this bucket, which, you know, helps me keep track of which ones I've emptied and which ones I haven't. This bed, the square foot bed, raised bed, is doing pretty well compared to the others in my garden. I think part of the reason is that I have these pinwheels already set up, which I think as they move, they scare away critters from eating my seedlings. And then also the raised bed, the majority of this soil came from what I had in my backyard last year, and I put a lot of work into having really good, healthy soil with a lot of compost and different mixtures in it. So I feel like you know, this bed has been kept up really well. Oh, don't you, wait, I got this stool from a Buy Nothing group, and I have it set up on top of boards so it doesn't sink into the dirt. I really love sitting here and looking out at my garden. Now let me show you what the rest of this community garden bed looks like. The bridle tool is actually doing pretty well, holding up well. I haven't seen any bugs inside. Definitely the star in this right now is the broccoli rabe, or the rapini broccoli. This is how the garden looks right now. So in the first row I have the beets, the second row is lettuces plus some cilantro, peas, and arugula. And then these 4 rows here are ones that I still need to dig up. I still need to amend and get ready for the summer garden. But overall, the garden is still doing pretty well. Now let me show you up close what I've sort of done here with these, this area where you see the bridle tool nearby. So one of the things I've learned here is that although this garden does have a fence, critters still get in. And I had a problem with, after I planted these lettuces, this is romaine lettuce here, after I planted these lettuces, some critter came through and grazed on them. So for example, you can see here where the lettuce leaves have been cut short, but luckily there are still some growing up, so the plant's okay. You can also see here like the nubs of cilantro from where some critter came through and grazed. But overall, what I've been trying to do is I put a tunnel over this at first, and then the plants were just getting overheated. So I had a friend come by yesterday, and she helped me set up where I already have these pinwheels going, which has helped deter them. But the bridle tool with these stakes, we put down, and then we put rocks similar to how I did with my other hoop house, just to help deter the critter. Not that they couldn't get through it, not that they couldn't dig through, but at least hopefully it'll serve as a deterrent that they can go somewhere else it's easier to eat than my garden. Another thing I'm learning about this garden, you know, I knew that it would be a learning process to learn about the soil quality, but the soil here is definitely not as rich as I'd hoped. And so the seedlings, like the arugula that I planted and the peas, are not doing as great as I'd hoped. And even the beets are not doing as well as they are in my home garden, which has been amended with compost and other nutrients for 2 years. In particular, the arugula had a real hard time. But I think I've been able to turn them around by adding liquid organic fertilizer to them to help build them out. And now I see they're getting some green leaves, which is so encouraging because it was about 3 weeks of them shriveling up and getting purple leaves. For example, look how the beets are doing here in my community garden plot. But see, here's beets in my home garden, and these sprouted and were planted probably a week to 2 after the ones in my community garden. They're catching up fast. By the way, don't the radishes look gorgeous? I mean, so happy to see some happy radishes. I love seeing rows of vegetation again. Okay, now let me take you back to see how my winter sowing jugs are doing. Over here, these are ones that have not sprouted yet. There are 2 in the front that are an exception, and I suspect that some of the ones that I haven't had success with are because either the seeds were old or I potentially forgot to put the seeds actually in the jugs when I was making them, which does happen. I caught myself doing it a couple times, and the fact that I caught myself doing it a couple times means it probably actually happened a couple more times than that. So the 2 that have sprouted that I have over here are just ones that I need to transplant soon. So leeks that I forgot to transplant, and they're a spring crop. They need to get out in the garden quick. So I'm going to put them in the front yard garden, I think. And then I have some Swiss chard that I started late. Let's see, I planted these on April 1. I realized I hadn't gotten any started, and Swiss chard can handle heat a little bit better, I think. So I'm hoping to transplant these soon. But the rest of these are not sprouted yet. And like this Ice Queen lettuce, these containers have done fine otherwise. There's no real other problems with the container, but there's no sprouts yet. So I probably just forgot to put seeds in. And some that just take longer to come out, like Gumfrina, stuff like that. Peppers can take longer. Some varieties take longer. I have one 60-day early meadow rue and one 60-day cold stratification Sweet Sicily that haven't sprouted yet. And plants that need cold stratification just take longer to sprout, I've heard in general. So I'm not as panicked, like my Golden Alexanders. So I'm not as panicked about them. And then here we have all the ones that have sprouted. And then this section over here are ones that I did in late March, early April, some of which have sprouted, but I just haven't integrated them into the whole set yet. But I'm so excited that I've had such a great success rate so far on my winter sown containers. We're getting to the time of year, at least here in Maryland Zone 7A, where it can get really hot in the afternoon sometimes. And you don't have to worry about your containers overheating until it gets above 90 degrees. And even then, you need to pay closer attention to whether your seedlings are actually getting stressed or not. If you can leave your jugs closed, and when I say closed, obviously you take the caps off as part of the winter sowing process, but if you can leave the jugs so that they're sealed, the duct tape is still on them, as long as possible, that's actually quite beneficial to your containers, to your seedlings. The reason being is the seedlings themselves benefit from a guaranteed sort of moist greenhouse effect environment. The seedlings, you won't have to worry about. Once you open up the containers, the soil dries out a lot faster. And then also being in the containers means that it's guaranteed to be warmer at nights inside the containers than it is out in the ambient air. And so it's really a good idea to try to leave them in as long as possible. Now there are some exceptions, and I am not at the stage where I have an exception to show you yet, but I can show you this container. So this is an Oxheart and a Marglobe tomato container. And you can see, look at that. The plant is, the leaves are up against the side. You can see inside, so some air is still getting in, but it's very close to the top. Because it isn't coming out the top specifically, I don't need to open the container. Also, if your tomato plant is growing out the top, if you can push it back in and you can still get air circulation, then it's fine. Now you will notice that the leaves are touching the sides, but they don't look unhealthy. They aren't burning. You don't see sun spots of burn. You don't see them molding. They'll kind of get brown edges on it if they're starting to be unhappy with touching the sides. Now, if we get a deep frost, the fact that these are touching the sides could hurt the leaves. And that would be one circumstance under which having them open and in a safer container, a safer location would be better. But for now, we don't have a frost coming. I'm going to leave this in here as long as I can. All right, now let me show you how a couple different seedlings and their containers are doing. I'll pick some prime examples of different things. This is a vinegar bottle, and this is Autumn Beauty sunflowers, and Velvet Queen sunflowers. Oh, they look so happy. This is also in I think this is in another vinegar bottle I got from a Buy Nothing group. And I like these taller bottles because they give a lot more room for things to grow. You know, like the tomatoes I was talking about earlier, they will grow out of the top in a milk jug. But in these kinds of tall, clear plastic ones, they have more headroom to keep growing before I have to open them up. Crimson Sweet Watermelon. Got some seedlings going there. Black Beauty Zucchini. You can see through here that it's already got a couple going. Yay! Connecticut Field Pumpkin. Oh, I have not been able to grow pumpkins because of vine borers, and I've heard they're less of a problem in my community garden, so I'm testing that out this year. Lilac bell peppers. Oh yeah, those are some happy bell peppers. Black Krim tomatoes. Yellow dwarf marigolds. California giant zinnias. Here's a little one for you. Love Lies Bleeding. Oh, yay. Here's a 2-for-1 for you. Lavender cotton and Indian blanket. Jalapeno peppers. Haha. Nagasaki eggplant. We finally got a Livingston Paragon tomato to sprout. Brad's Atomic grape tomatoes. And now, before I end this video, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button. Let me show you some other scenes around my garden, including my tulips have finally bloomed.